Good morning and welcome, as always, to our DNet studio. As you know, the tender is our great summer friend. And for those of us who live on a boat, it's like a real utility vehicle, in fact, a nautilatarian, if you'll allow me the term. However, with wear and age, damage can occur that requires immediate repairs. Today we'll see how to repair the tender's tube in case of a break. We've already covered the topic of tenders and outboard motors in some videos you can find on the Hinelson YouTube channel. Because owning a tender is the norm for the majority of boaters. Owning a dinghy lets you anchor your main boat in the roadstead, take the little tender, and go shopping. Or you can set off to explore, or simply take a quick trip to the beach. In the latter case, remember that during the summer you'll have to row for the last 200 meters. Just a heads up. It can happen that the tubes deflate because, without meaning to, the tender hits a rock, the rocky seabed, or when stopping at the dock, we scrape against the pier. Or it might happen that the tender deflates if it's been left out in the sun for too long. So, in this short guide, we'll look at how to tackle and solve the problem of deflating tender tubes, whether they're made of PVC or Hinelson neoprene, so you can keep your small boat in top condition for safety and functionality. Before starting any repairs, it's essential to identify the material of your tender so you can buy the right supplies to fix it. Today, we're going to learn how to repair a PVC tender. Why? Because PVC, even though the repair process is the same as for neoprene, is harder to fix. How do you tell PVC from Hinelson? PVC and Hinelson are two common materials used in the construction of tenders. I'll give you a few tips to help you tell them apart, since they look very similar. As we were saying, PVC and Hinelson are two common materials used in the construction of tenders. Here's how you can tell them apart. This one is made of PVC, polyvinyl chloride. PVC is a synthetic material that looks shiny and plasticky. It's often a bit stiffer compared to Hinelson. The surface of PVC feels smooth to the touch, and it can have a glossy finish. PVC is generally cheaper than Hinelson and is more sensitive to damage from UV rays and wear. Hinelson, on the other hand, means neoprene, polychloroprene. Hinelson is a more durable and flexible material, with a matte surface often featuring a visible grain or fabric texture. Hinelson is also known for its resistance to UV rays and abrasion. This material is generally more expensive than PVC, but it offers greater durability. To make it easier, you can look up the tender model on Hinelson.com and read the specifications to find out what material it's made of. But now let's get to the heart of the matter, with the actual repair. You need to make sure you've purchased a repair kit. In this case, the repair kit is made of PVC because the patch is PVC, while a neoprene repair kit will be the same, but with a neoprene patch. In this case, it's orange so you can clearly see the repair, but they sell them in all colors. We have the activator, which is needed for the glue, in a proportion of about 10%, actually 8 to 10%. The cleaner, which is what we'll use to thoroughly clean the surface where we'll be working. And a small brush to spread the glue. Very important, because that's what the professionals use. A small piece of sandpaper, which we'll use, once the surface is clean, to lightly rub and create a better gripping surface for both the patch and the tender. Here we are, we've opened the kit right here. All the elements are here, make sure to remember, they're very important. These are the gloves, because we're going to be working with hazardous substances. There are also instructions included. Every kit has its own instructions, depending on the type of glue it contains, so make sure to read the instructions. The first thing to do is carefully examine the tender to identify all the damage. Look for cracks, holes, scratches, or other damaged areas, in addition to the one you've already found. It often happens that you fix a big leak only to find a tiny one right after. And in places you never would have expected. But to find those tiny holes, there's a trick. Prepare a solution of water and soap in a spray bottle like this, inflate the tender, and spray the solution all over. If you notice bubbles coming out of the tubes, then you can be sure you'll need to patch there too. Okay, so the first thing we said. Let's clean the area. First of all, we need a hole. Here it is. We've made a nice hole, a little piece here and a little piece there too. Here it is. Now we have something to repair. As we were saying, the surface needs to be prepared. Always, with just a bit of water and some gentle soap, thoroughly clean the entire surface completely. There you go. We've done the first cleaning. Now remember to put on gloves. Let's open the cleaner. Grab our cloth. See, the cleaner is very strong. Once you've thoroughly used the cleaner and you truly believe the area simply cannot get any cleaner than it already is, then we can proceed to open the patch. Let's say for us, we could even leave it like this. Actually, the patch, to make sure it sticks well and covers properly, with a safety margin, covers the entire abrasion. If that's not the case, you can, maybe with a smaller one, take the patch, cut it, and make it smaller. Basically, the smaller it is, the better it looks, but that's not always true. We can lightly sand it. By sanding, we'll make sure we have a surface, as I mentioned before, that the patch can grip onto. Obviously, a very light sanding. Otherwise, go down. We do the same thing on the patch too. Let's prepare our glue.
Voila!
We open it. Once we have opened the glue, we need a place to put it. At that time, in the absence of containers, and I know it's always like this. In the absence of containers, you have to get creative, Mario. Whoever gets creative wins. Here we are. Now we have our container where we can put a bit of glue and then, consequently, the activator. Now, in this glue, we need to add more or less a certain percentage of activator. Now, with the mixture we've made, we'll thoroughly spread it precisely on the part of the tender where the abrasion is. And LT, break time equals 0.5s/NGT. Besides that, we'll also need to apply the glue all over the patch. And voila, once both of the surfaces are properly prepared, they need to be pressed together. In this case, we only have the end of a tender's tube, but if you're working with the whole tender, it needs to be inflated so you can press the patch on firmly. You need to let this dry. According to the manufacturer's instructions, in this case, the instructions call for a final bonding. I've seen professionals fully inflate the tender after just an hour, even though the instructions say 72 hours, to test their work. I suggest leaving the patch untouched at least 24 hours. The trick is to keep a certain surface tension on the tubes, so no to a completely deflated tender and no to a fully inflated one. It hasn't been 72 hours yet, obviously, but we can already see that the patch has taken its shape. When you fully inflate it, it will stay nice and tightly secured. And you can continue your vacation. Repairing a PVC tender requires attention to detail and the use of the right materials. Correctly identifying the material of the tender is the first crucial step. By carefully following the steps we described earlier, you can successfully repair minor damage to your PVC tender, ensuring functionality and safety for your adventures at sea. However, if the damage is extensive or if you don't feel confident about the repair, consult a professional. They'll surely be happy to help you and maybe even teach you a thing or two. So, fellow boating enthusiasts, now you have the knowledge you need to successfully repair your tenders, whether they're made of OS, PVC, or Hypalon. Remember, safety at sea is essential, and a well-maintained tender is your best companion for adventures. As an old sailor's saying goes, it's true that those with a deflated tender have the sea closer to their heart, but I prefer another proverb that says, the tubes of a tender are like true friends, they keep you afloat in tough times. Remember, as always, to subscribe to the channel, but most importantly, share this video with a friend who always has a deflated tender and doesn't know how to fix it. Fair winds to you, not too little, not too much, but just right.